Hello, friends, weebs, and anything in between. Wait, what's between a friend and a weeb? Honestly, I have no idea where I'm going with these intros. Anyway, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing kind of a follow-up, or not really a follow-up, but a continuance of our how we can make the better game. I'm going to come up with a better name for the series, but essentially how we can improve or what types of improvements I'd like to see for NGS overall. But before we jump into that, if you're new to the channel, I'm Chrono. I cover PSO2 content primarily, with some other stuff splashed in between. If you want to keep up with the content, would appreciate a subscribe as we work our way towards, I'm going to think of a number one of these days. Again, small number, get bigger, or big number. It's a big number at the moment for me. Big number, get bigger. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So as always, we start these off with my disclaimer. So you guys are aware, I am not the end all be all when it comes to information covering PSO2. There are plenty of other opinions that exist out there. Everyone's themselves is valid, but it's just that it's my opinion. You're more than welcome to disagree with it. However, we are respectful of one another here, and I'm not going to deal with anything otherwise. So basically, it's okay to have a different opinion. Just don't be a jerk about it. All right, so let's get into what today's video is actually going to be talking about. So this one is a pretty big one. It's kind of a big discussion a lot of people have different opinions about. And I honestly feel like it's the one thing that would save PSO2 NGS if it really needed saving like that. Some would argue it does, some would argue it doesn't. I'm not here to debate whether or not it does. I'm just here to get these thoughts out, because if I don't, then I just talk to them about my friends, and eventually they're just going to get bored of me and stop talking to me. So I can talk to you guys instead, and maybe we'll have a decent discussion about the situation. Anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is PSO2's Endgame. Its endgame gameplay loop, and what I feel like the game could really use to make you want to log in. Not force you to log in every day, but make you want to log in every day and have a good time while you're playing. So to talk about that, we have to talk about PSO2's current endgame gameplay loop and what it's like. Right now at max level, there are a few things that you can really do. You log in, you have your dailies. You can either run purple triggers, you can wait around for a urgent quest to spawn, or you can farm materials, you can farm augmentation capsules off of the various mobs in the world. You also, of course, have the option of standing around in the lobby with your fashion, talking with your friends, but that's realistically about it for an endgame gameplay loop. And the thing about it is it hasn't really changed at all from when the purple triggers came out back in ILEO. It's mostly the same thing. Now, the team is very much aware of this. They know they've got to work on content more. They know the player base is looking for specific types of content, more challenging things to do than just farm mobs all day long. And that's something that they have in the roadmap. If you guys haven't checked that out, something I'll link in the video description. It's something that's in the roadmap itself. They're well aware of it. But what type of content would we really like to see? So if we think back to base PSO2, yes, I know I do the retrospect a lot, but it's something I have a lot of experience with and something that was very, very popular and very successful in what it did. Thinking back to base PSO2, there were a few pieces of content that really stuck out to me. Now, we had something called Endless. Endless was essentially in a bit of a roguelike in a sense. There were a set number or a set type of maps you could get with certain types of spawns, certain conditions, and essentially you would just push through to see how far you could get on any given time, getting more time for completing the objectives on each stage. There were different strategies, different leaderboards. You'd go in solo, you can go in with a group. There were certain, rewards, not so much rewards in like a tangible sense, but like titles and things like that that players chased after, that even to this day, some people are still working on some of that stuff from back in base PSO2. I can say that I actually have not gone back to get my lone title, my Forever Loner title, any of those titles specifically, because I've just been so busy with other stuff, but it's still there, and it's actually content that some people still play to this day. That's saying something when every other part of PSO2 base currently is I don't want to say it's dead, but it is nowhere near as active as it used to be. That really tells me that the player base actually did enjoy that kind of content. Now, granted, it was a specific part of the player base, but it was fun to play. It was actually pretty fun to watch as well. And it was something that you could work on at your own pace. You weren't forced to log in to do something daily. You didn't have to get a certain amount done every single day to get some sort of reward. It was something you took at your own time, and it was fairly difficult. Granted, it got easier with more gear. Earlier you were able to do it, and the more prestigious it seemed, so it was pretty cool, almost similar to like a raid instance in other MMOs. But it was just a fun piece of content to have, and it was something I'd love. It's something I would love to see pop up again, given that we have that giant looking Aincrad thing up in the sky above the city. Maybe that's something that we can go through in floors. Maybe that's something they're already planning. We'll have to see, but we've got so much stuff. We got the cocoons and all these things that kind of give this space for this type of content. I feel like it could be very, very, very fun. So where could we go from there, right? We're talking about Endless, or we have talked about Endless, but there is other pieces of content that people really, really enjoyed. Now, this is one of those things that's going to take time. Like over time, we'll have more of these, but more boss encounters. When I say boss encounters, I'm talking about urgent quests. These massive scaled bosses were actually a lot of fun because there were so many of them. There was just a variety overall. There's some bosses you liked, some you didn't, some that would cycle in and get stronger. They'd have certain buffs, like certain things like that would just keep things interesting and fresh. And it was something that everyone could get into. If you wanted to challenge yourself, you could go with less players. You could try to solo 12-man instances. Me and my friends did that quite a bit. You could go for soloing the 4-man instances. But it was just something that you could really get into and have a lot of fun with. Now, this was a bit mixed because sometimes the bosses were good, sometimes the bosses kind of sucked, and really you would be waiting around for so long for a new boss, and then to get a boss that really wasn't that great didn't feel good. On top of that, back then, base PSO2 had a scheduling system where you could plan out your time if you had available time. The downside was that it forced you to log in at that specific time to do that specific piece of content. Now, anyone who follows my channel knows I don't like urgent quests in a sense, like the urgent quest system. It's kind of cool in a random perspective occasionally, but at the same time, like there's certain times I just want to do certain bosses. Like I want to farm them, I want to fight them. I feel like it'd be a lot more fun if you could just go do that piece of content whenever you felt like it. And I can hear you guys now, but streamer, but YouTuber, you can, they're called triggers. Yeah, we're getting to that. Triggers are the next thing we can talk about. So triggers back in base PSO2 would essentially allow players to do urgent quests outside of the ones that were scheduled or the ones that would pop up. Now, this was really good on global because they gave us triggers for everything. I mean like every major boss, we were able to get triggers and farm those bosses consistently. And we could have a good time. We could play them whenever we wanted to. We'd get, a group of friends together and go out and fight those bosses, and it felt awesome. It was a lot of fun. The triggers weren't difficult to come by. Some of them were, but in most cases they weren't unreasonable, and you could get a lot of farming done. You could get a lot of money making done in some cases, or just have a good time fighting bosses and helping your friends get gear. The one downside to triggers though is when you were finished with a boss, you were really finished with a boss. Like you didn't really want to fight them very much anymore. Realistically, like the urgent quests would pop up on schedule or the random ones, and in a lot of cases I just didn't even go. I just went to whatever else I was doing because I'd fought the boss so many times and gotten everything I wanted that really just didn't matter much to me. So triggers are a bit of a double-sided sword, or double-edged sword. Like it's great to be able to do content whenever you want, but at the same time it does devalue it when you can get into it whenever you feel like it a little bit. I say a little bit because done right, it's still totally fun. So I'm going to wrap this up with the last piece of content I'd really like to see and that I really do miss. And it's similar to, it's kind of funny, is it's very similar to another thing we talked about, the endless thing, which were the divide quests. Now, divide quests were really, really good in base PSO2. They were a lot of fun to do. They, honestly, like you could do them with friends, you could do them solo, you'd still interact with people. They were just very, very well designed in my opinion, that it was an awesome piece of content, and I'd love to see something similar to it again. So divide quests essentially had a set of steps. You would go from 1 to 35. I believe it was like every 5 steps was an individual set. But as you went higher in the steps, or in the stages themselves, the stages would become more difficult. Each stage would have its own modifier, whether it be, enemies were stronger, whether you were weaker, whether you were stronger, certain enemies were weaker, depending upon what the stage that you were on. It added a little bit of flavor to a set level of types of levels you could have. There was essentially like a tile system where there were certain types of stages that you could get depending upon the stage that you were on, and you would go through those stages from fighting a boss to doing a bit of tower defense, to trying to fight a really big boss but having to wait around for smaller enemies to kill to get buffs to kill the boss, to killing tons of enemies and cascading explosions, to killing very specific bosses that were like big bads of the current expansion that we were on at the time, So it was kind of all over, and it was a lot of variety for very, very little so we're looking for very little effort on the player's part. You could just queue into a divide quest and you never knew what you were going to get. You just had to take a look, and then you're like, oh, cool. I've got to fight this boss with these different things going on. This is super cool. Let's go ahead and do it. The thing about divide quests, though, where it wasn't just about doing divide quests for the fun of it. The rewards were also very good. At the time, divide quests tied into a specific weapon series that we were going to be after, and we needed the resources from divide quests, so we would do them because we would be working slowly towards getting upgrades to our gear anyway. On top of that, if you didn't need the materials, or you didn't care so much about certain upgrades very quickly, or you got super lucky with certain camos, you could also make a lot of money off of divide quests. So not only were they fun, you were able to make money, you were working towards gear at the same time. Like, everything about divide quests were just really, really well made. And if I had to pick one thing I wanted most in NGS, it's a system similar to that. Divide quests kept me playing PSO2 so much longer than I would have. I could sit here and probably rant about another 6 or 7 minutes about how much, or rant and rave in a good way about how much I love divide quests, but long story short, it's something I would love to see towards our end game. Now, I will say a lot of these things are something that needs to be worked on over time, but it would be nice to start to see some of these things show up to keep the player kind of enticed, the appetite there to keep wanting to play to when we get more of these things. I wouldn't be surprised, or I would totally be, not successful, but I would totally be satisfied with seeing like a similar divide quest mechanic added to the game that was only the first 10 floors maybe. Granted, it would not be very much, but it's something that could build on over time. Maybe endless, but it's like the first section of endless itself, or like a smaller version of it. Players might play something similar to that and move forward as far as they can until the next set comes out. At the time of recording this video, we do know that triggers are coming for urgent quests, but we do need more big bad urgent quests. Those urgent quests would be a lot of fun. The issue is a lot of the bosses we're fighting in the urgent quests we currently have are just also out in the world. It kind of takes a bit away from like the massive scale feeling of the boss when we go into it, and it's a boss that I could have also fought at the end of a PSE burst. Again, these things will come over time. It's just we need to start working towards those, and that's what's going to make a huge impact when it comes to the end game of NGS. But that's all I've got for you guys. If you have any other questions, any other comments, basically what would you guys like to see in the game itself on your end, feel free to toss them down below. Again, be kind to one another. I'm not really dealing with any of that extra stuff, so if it goes too far, it's going to get thrown. I'm really not going to fight about it. That's just kind of what we're doing about it nowadays. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, peace out, and thanks for watching to the end.